Hey guys, welcome back. It is your favorite Gimp of the Limp, and I got the big one set up for you. I have it. It's here. It's all set up. Now, I already did an unboxing video, and I've done a review video or preview video for this game, but this is Imperial Borders, the Congress of Vienna. I've got the whole thing set up. I've actually only done 4 of the factions. I didn't even include Russia and Spain in this little setup, but this game is too good, too big, too awesome not to at least set up once and show you the final production version of the game set up, show a little bit of the gameplay that's going on with this thing, all these beautiful finalized components. So that's what I've done. I set up the game for a 4-player game. Britain up there, the French right here, we got Prussia over here, and then off to the right we got Austria, but it will support up to 6 players with all the different factions. Some of the areas get left off if you leave some factions off. That way they don't have like extra places like free spaces they can take advantage of if you don't include like Spain down over here or Russia way up over there. Again, this game is so massive though that I can't get this whole thing in frame. Look, it goes all the way up over there, goes all the way over there, goes all the way down here, all the way back down here. Huge amount of stuff going on here. And I don't even have, I mean, part of the neoprene is hanging off my table. And this is a 5 by 3.5, 4-foot table. A huge amount of space on this thing, and I still can't fit the whole thing. 2 huge neoprene mats. You can see it. There's a little divide right up here through the center that you can barely see. I actually got to give it to them. They did a good job with these neoprene mats. They line up almost exactly spot on. So you can't even really tell. You can see right here is where the line is. Can't even really tell it's there. Maybe up there a little bit in the C area where it's split just a little bit, but everything just looks so good. I love these finalized components. The ones I had originally were the 3D printed ones, and these are the actual finalized, just regular, I guess, injection molded plastic. You could paint these if you want to, but then you would have to get real detailed with it to make sure you could tell which faction they go to. I'm probably not going to do that myself. But those are finalized. We also have our now forts, all the different forts, right? Final versions of those, plastic as well. And then these little flags. These little flags, sorry, I got paint all over my hands from painting minis. But anyway, these little flags can have stickers put on them. That's the one set of stickers I did not do because hell no, I am not stickering all these damn flags. They're different colors, so they're easy to tell without having to put the damn stickers on them. There are stickers for other components though. There are some wooden blocks. They get stickers for things like hot zones, or if you're trying to annex a zone on these little wooden cubes. But other than that, there aren't too many stickers in this game. But before we show a little bit more of the gameplay, let's go ahead and go over the components that came with the finalized version. We do have our turn cards. There's going to be one for each faction. This is going to be used when you are bidding for your turn order. And that is going to be kept track of again on that left side of the board. Each player will bid an amount of gold that they want to spend to get their choice of where they go. Maybe they don't want to go first because you're winning your choice. You don't necessarily have to go first. You might want to go second or third or fourth. Maybe you want them to act before you act, or maybe you want to act first. Spending more gold will give you that chance, but you don't have to spend any gold, but then you're just going to be randomly put on the board. Playing it solitaire, my idea with this would be just to turn the cards over and shuffle them up and randomly place them down if I'm going to just freehand it. You know, me playing the game out just so it has a random turn order, and I would probably just leave the bidding out. That's if you're playing it solitaire. All right, so besides that, we've got pieces for each one of the factions. And each faction has their own tuck box, just like we saw in their World War II game, that will hold all of your pieces. So you got spots for your ships, your infantry, your cannon, your cavalry, and there's an extra slot because when you first get your game, this little slot's empty, and all the flags and the little tokens that represent for ports, and these are very thick tokens. These go on top. You see the round ports there. That signals who owns that port. So there's ports and forts both serve a very similar function. Basically, it's the control of that zone. You'll use the tokens to signify if you own the port and the flags to signify if you own the fort. Before you actually start playing the game, I would go ahead and dump all of those out, separate them by faction, and get them put into these tuck boxes. Besides that, we do have a few other components that need to be stickered. These are the ones that are going to be used for combat to signify if you're being defensive or offensive. And these will also be used when you are doing the voting later on in the game. So this is yes and this is no. Each player can secretly decide which one of those they want to go with. You'll have one of these cubes for each one of the different factions to be used during combat and or voting. So besides the tuck boxes, and like I said, there's a tuck box for each faction. So you got one of those huge boxes of units for all 6 factions. But that's not it. We've also got a tuck box here for all the common components in the game. And it's big enough to separate all the stuff out. So these are all the tokens that you're going to use. Things like elite pennants for the units. I put some of the extra ones over here just to not pile this up too much. Forget what these ones are. I have to refresh my memory. Hit tokens, money tokens. That's a negative penalty. It's the opposite of the blue one, but I forget its exact name. Or no, I think that might be that one. Anyway, and then our movement tokens over here. This one is a excellent inclusion. This makes it very easy. We don't need any little plastic baggies. No plastic baggies required. You can fit all the tokens, all the components right here in this box, neatly separated. Excellent. Besides that, we also have a tuck box that has all the extra forts in it. So you've got the big forts, the smaller forts, and then the ports in here as well. So like the bigger port, the little ports, the baby ports. We got little baby forts here, the smallest ones. So there are 3 sizes when it comes to ports and forts, but you're only going to have 2 sizes that you actually see here. The 3rd size is going to be, let me reach over here and grab it, ones that are capital forts, and they have a cardboard piece that will be put down. So each faction will have a capital fort. So this is like the biggest fort, big fort. And this will be located in their main capital. Some factions do have capital ports, and those also have a cardboard token that goes around them. That would be the UK and Russia both have capital ports that they can use. The UK actually having 2 on their coast, one there at London and one at Liverpool. So in total, you're going to have 8 of these little tuck boxes, 1 for each one of the factions, and then 1 for fortifications and 1 for common components, common tokens. Now, besides that, we've got a few other big boards that are going to be used. This one is our battle board. I showed this when we went over all of our components. So this is the one you're going to use if you have a large scale battle going on. And it's really kind of up to you to determine what large scale is. If it's a small scale, so you've got like just 1 or 2 units on each side, they did include a nice small board that you can use that I just dropped. All right, here, also divided, and it's the same way as the big one. Each is going to have a front and a rear. So each side divided by the line, you've got your front and then rear forces. Some forces can only go on one side or the other, like cannons can only go in the rear. And then of course we have our port battle here on the back side of it. And also on this one, we've got our port battle. So if you have a big port battle, you use this board. If you have a small port battle, you'll use this board. When it comes to certain prestige points, victory points, and the like, we've got a nice slick board here. You can see how shiny it is. And it's because you're supposed to be using the dry erase here. So you can mark down the points that you accrue for all the different factions. And winning these will gain you certain medals, which will gain you certain bonuses that are listed here at the top. So you always want to kind of earn these when you can. This is a one-sided board, just so you know. And they did include enough markers for every player. So everybody gets a marker. You get a marker, he gets a marker, everybody gets a marker. And excuse me, I misspoke on the previous one. It was morale points on the other one. This one is your prestige points. So this is basically your victory point track here. These also have stickers that go on them. Nice little plastic tokens that fit right here in our embossed board. Love that. And then our round tracker that has a little Napoleon figure right there at the top, so you can keep track of which turn it is. And then it starts talking about when you're doing peace deals potentially up here. This is when you're going to be doing your voting. So nice little board to keep track of our victory points. Then we have one more little one here for casualty points, like how much each one of these is worth as casualty points, because you get morale bonuses for taking out enemy units during the game. These are the morale tokens. That's what I was trying to remember the name of them earlier, the blue and the red ones. Backside of this is a battle dice log. So if you've got a bigger battle going on and you're trying to keep track of how many dice that you're going to have, you can write that down here. And again, dry erase, very nice. Now this one is the big one. Each faction's going to have one of these, and I like this. Some people don't, they think it's too big, but honestly, this game is one of those go big or go home. It's huge. Everything's big. Everything is huge. Lots of big components, huge map. So it's like, of course, these components are going to be massive. Here we have a nice, basically chart that tells you everything you need to know. All the little modifiers, the sequence of play, things that are going on, buying land units, your setup for your faction. So for example, Austria here is going to start with these units. The ones that have blue have elite status. What goes in each one of your little capitals, what little ships you start with, what's going on during the game round. So we're going to collect taxes, then we're going to plot our movement, and then even what type of movement everyone's going to have, and then cargo capacity. So our ships can carry land units, and it lists all this down. Each one of the factions is going to have one of these. It's going to have a lot of this information on it. And then the bottom side is going to be a huge map that lists down the whole game area. And this is where you're going to draw out your orders. It explains specifically how to do that, but basically what you're going to do is draw a line from the zone that you're moving from to the zone you're moving to, and you'll put a dot for each unit that you're moving. It doesn't mean that you have to write down exactly which unit. So if our French guy here was moving units over here, he could put 3 dots or 2 dots and move which units he wants to. He doesn't have to say exactly which units, but you do have to mark down how many units you are going to move. If you do mark down an illegal move, say for example, you cross white mountains or brown mountains that you're not allowed to cross in one movement. You go to the mountains, you have to move on to the mountains, stop, and then finish moving across them later on a following turn. If you do it wrong, then the unit's orders gets canceled and they don't actually get to complete their orders. So each player kind of has to check after the other players. If you're playing in solitaire, you have to make sure you don't screw up. Other than that, we got a bucket of dice for each one of the players. Huge amount of dice, more than enough than you will need. These are going to be your black cannon dice and your white like fighting dice. So cannons, things like actual cannons and ships will use black dice. Forts will use black dice. And infantry and cavalry will use white dice, a varying number depending on what type of unit it is. For example, a full infantry unit can use 3, whereas a half infantry unit can only use 1. So full infantry is something like this, and a half infantry is something like this, half the size of the full infantry. Now, something that I did a little digging into, and what I figured out for this is that there is no way to reconstitute half infantry back into full infantry. So if you have 2 half infantry, you're not allowed to jump them back together into a whole infantry. They're effectively half infantry for the rest of the game. The only way you can have full infantry is if you buy full infantry during your recruitment phase and put them on the board, but once they're damaged down to half, they don't get to recover back from that to full. I was thinking about it. I think you can house rule it if you want to. If you wanted to allow half units to be joined back together into a full unit, I think you could allow that if you want to. It's your game. Play it your way. I think it's really just going to come down to the way you want to play the game. If you want to make it a little bit harder to have the harder hitting units, the full infantry, they do 3 times the damage of a half infantry, so they are worth it for their cost. It's just up to you. If the people you're playing with want to be able to join those together, you could say do that in the recruitment phase, purchasing units phase, something along those lines. I would say, go for it. That's completely up to you. But again, that's not a rule in the game. If you want full infantry, as far as the game goes, you have to buy them. Once they're damaged, no coming back. The only other thing to be aware of is during setup, you're going to have your selection of units, right? So this is what the French start with. A couple of ships, all these different assorted infantry and cavalry and cannons and all the like. And the only restriction is you cannot have more than 3 units in any one space. But that's starting. That's only when you're starting the game. That restriction goes out the door once you have started the game. So like here, I've got the trifecta. And I call it the trifecta. There is a reason for that. If you have a cannon, a cavalry, make sure I say it right so people don't bash me in the damn comments. CAV, cavalry. If you have a cavalry, cannon, and full infantry, they get combat bonuses. It basically counts as combined arms. You have the perfect fighting force right there, and they get extra dice for their attack. So you want to attack with many of those as you can. And Prussia, in fact, is the only nation on the board that starts with 2 groups of those. Every other nation only starts with the ability to field 1 full set of cavalry, cannon, and full infantry. Like the French here, they've only got, I think, just a single cannon and cavalry. Yeah, single ones of those. The British start with like an elite ship, so they're a little bit better at that. But the Prussians are the only ones who start with that really good bonus of having 2 sets of a full infantry, cavalry, and cannon. Lastly, when it comes to getting your money, you're going to get your money from the territories you have annexed, which are the lightish green ones, and then the home territories that you control. So like France here, each nation is going to start with the same thing. 1 capital zone that gives you 4, and then 4 smaller zones that give you 2. So in total, you start with 12 income just for the territories you own, but there's also 1 extra territory. For example, France starts with this territory down here already annexed. Every nation starts with 1 territory they have already annexed. So besides the 12 that they get from there, you also get the 1 that you control from down here. And I'll show you over here. We've got the British who start with, what is this, Hanover. And they get the port of Brennan as well. And then like Westphalia over here, the Prussians start with, and then Tyrol down over here, the Austrians start with. So you'll have your home section +1 when you start the game. One last neat little bonus is the British do get colony money. That's what that little symbol up there represents. And as long as they have at least 1 ship of the line and control of the London port, they get that extra 2 income each turn on top of everything else that they own. So you get that little bonus. But the British do have the drawback compared to the rest of everyone else. Everyone else can kind of get to greenish territory to start annexing real quickly. The British are all kind of stuck up here, and they have to start funneling their ships, their infantry down over here to do attacks. And then when they buy new units, which all have to start at home areas, they're going to have to be ferried over. So it's kind of easier for the other factions to gain control of these areas. So I think that colony income kind of offsets that a little bit. It's kind of like them owning 2 annexed areas. And again, just as an FYI, these lower areas, if you're playing a game where you don't have Spain or way over in the corner, Russia, these areas are technically considered off limits. You can't go into these areas at all. That's another one. I think you could house rule it if you want to. If you want to just count these as extra green zones and count them as 1 apiece and leave them open to attack, I say go for it. Why not? There's no reason the British can come down over here and try to get some. The Austrians come around over here. The French pour in across the border. Same thing over there with Russia. If you just want to have a bigger map to play on, I say go for it. It's your game. Have fun with it. But just for funsies here, just to show the game and show you how many moving parts and how much cool stuff's going on. And strangely enough, for a game of this size with as many components as it has, it's actually fairly streamlined. It's not that hard. to play. It's not that complex at all. We'll play through one turn here. We'll do the movements. I'll plot it out for each one of the different factions. Get some guys moving in to new areas, show you how annexation works when you actually get into some of these areas. Because while you can take an unoccupied port, you can't take an unoccupied area just automatically by moving into it. You have to do the annexation thing where you move into it, and then there's a dice roll to see if you actually gain control of the zone. And then obviously if you have units from each side move into the same zone, there'll be an attack. But very quickly, before we get started with that, something neat about this game is you can play it with teams, right? So if you wanted to do like the British and the Prussians versus the French and the Austrians, you can do that. But if you do play a team game, you can't turn on each other. You're flat out teams. But you can also play it just like free, everyone for themselves. But there's the soft diplomacy, right? So you can make deals with each other. You can trade money back and forth. You can trade territories. You can make agreements not to attack each other. And then you can backstab each other and do it anyway. So all that little diplomacy, wheeling and dealing, all that stuff, that can go on in this game. It is fully allowed, and you're fully allowed to lie to people. Fully allowed to screw them. Oh, no. Yeah, go attack the Austrians, French. Don't worry, I'm not going to come down in your country. Wham, and hit them with everything. I think that's really neat that you can do diplomacy like that in this game. And I think that really lends it to that bigger gameplay when you've got like 6 people and then you start wheeling and dealing each other, making deals like, yeah, let's do this. Let's just work against those dirty French. And then just seeing what happens. But of course, still fun to play solo. So let's go through a round and let you guys see how the units move and all that good stuff. All right, so we're going to run through just a quick example turn, nothing too fancy. I got to stack some stuff back up because my kitties got into this room and knocked a bunch of units around. So everything might not be exactly where it left off at this cut. Damn cats, I was having to get into my stuff. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump into our example turn here. Now, the first thing that you're going to do is you are going to collect taxes. Now, on this first turn, you do have to keep in mind that Great Britain and Prussia, both of those ones, will have a little bit of extra money. They get to start with 5 extra, which is a treasure chest in here. So every treasure chest is 5. Coins themselves are 1. They each get to start with the extra 5 because of defeating Napoleon. And also, don't forget the colonial taxes that Great Britain gets. That's an extra 2. And I think that kind of helps offset the fact that Great Britain is off map. Everyone else is here. They get to kind of annex territories a lot easier. Great Britain has to push their way on the board. So that's effectively like 2 units, 2 annexations out there that they get to have for free, which I think does help offset that quite nicely. So you'll have a little treasure chest in each one of their little boxes. Also, don't forget, when we inflict casualties, the casualties you inflict, not yours, but the ones you kill, go in your box. So if Great Britain kills French units will go in the Great Britain box, and that counts for like morale points at the end of the turn. After that, we plot our secret orders. Now, this is where we get into these really cool pieces here. This is where you open it up. You have one for each faction. Has a bunch of player aid information there at the top. Very nice. And then, of course, our big map here. Now, I've gone ahead and done the other 3 to save us on time, but I am going to do France now to show you guys how this will work. So we've got all these French units across the board. Is that where I want to start their boats? Actually, I might do their boats. Well, we'll leave their boats there for now because I'm doing things in a couple of different ways to show off a couple of aspects of the game. So let's aim down here at France. See what we've got. We've got their trifecta right here. We've got some more units here. A little lone guy up there. He's going to stay there just in case, guarding against Great Britain coming down. And don't forget, when you start off, only 3 units in each section. But after that, no holds barred. Anything's the limit. All right. So we want to start gaining territory. Where are we going to start gaining territory? Well, we could start moving some of our guys forward. Remember, they can move 2 except for cavalry. Cavalry can move 2 and then 1. And you don't have to plot the 1. That does not have to be written on here. That can be performed afterwards. So as an example, let's say we want our trifecta here, full infantry, cannon, and cavalry to go to Wurtemberg. We want to try to annex that. So we would take our little board here. They are in this location and they want to annex this one. So you simply draw a line and you're going to just do 3 little dots to represent that there are 3 units that you're planning on doing that with. Now, there could be 10 units there, right? So if there were 10 units and you only wanted to move 3, you'd put the 3 dots. You don't have to put what specific units you're moving, just how many that you're moving. So let's say we want to send these guys over here. We want to start taking parts of northern Italy. To show how that's going to work, you notice there's mountain ranges in some of these areas. That's because when you move into a mountain range, it counts as a spot. You have to stop there. So those 3 guys are going to go here to this mountain range. We'll put some dots there and try to have it showing because they're all going to go to the mountain range. All right, so that takes care of this group and this group. We have some guys here, guy that we're going to leave there, and we'll leave our boats alone for now. We're not going to do anything with them for our example turn. But we also have some other movements we could make. We could go towards Belgium, or we could go towards Switzerland. Let's see, which do we want to do? Well, if we go towards Switzerland, there is a mountain range. So it'd be 1 and then stop. But we could get there before Austria or Prussia, so that might be an idea. Or we could run straight towards Belgium. We'll do another mountain as an example. Get to Switzerland before anyone else. So we'll put another, we got 3 units there, another 3 dots on that mountain ranges. We want to leave our infantry there. We're not moving our boats, so we don't have to mark anything there. And that is going to be our orders done. Now, when you get to other players, we start revealing these. When we get to that section, the on the march part of the turn sequence, other players will look at this and make sure you wrote it down correctly. Like if you cross a mountain range and you did not actually do it properly and you did it all in one turn, then those orders get canceled and that unit stays where they were. You put one of those little white arrows next to them. That indicates that their orders were canceled. They can still participate in battles, but they don't get to make their movement. So make sure you have your little arrows nearby because you're going to be using a lot of these here in just a sec as we start moving everybody. Now, I went ahead and did this part because we've done collect taxes, we've plotted our secret orders, and now the third part is establish that turn order. If you're playing it solitaire, I would recommend doing it the way I'm doing it, which is I just randomly shuffle those cards, whatever factions are in the game. Spain and Russia are out, so they always occupy 5 and 6. The others, I just shuffled face down and randomly put them on the board to establish a turn order. If you are playing it multi-handed or you want to include the bidding, that's where that bidding comes into play. You will hold money in your hand, hold it out, and then reveal it. Whoever bid the most gets to pick whatever spot. But remember, you lose that money. So that's money you don't get to spend towards buying other units later. But maybe you want to go first. Maybe you want to go last. Maybe you want to see where other guys are going. Maybe you want to try to get somewhere first. So that turn order can be very important. But like I said, if you're playing it solitaire, I would just randomly shuffle the cards face down. It gives you a random order, and that way, what happens, happens. For us, we are going to have Britain, then Prussia, then France, and then Austria for our turn order. So let's take a look at the UK and what orders they have decided to accomplish for this turn. Okay, so for the UK decided to do some landings. They are trying to gain control of some ports, and they're trying to get units inland, and they're bringing the rest of their units down here towards the coast so they can be brought in later. Okay, so what the UK has decided to do is they've decided to use both of their ships to load up all 3 units that are located here at the coast. Remember, your ships of the line can hold up to 2 units or 4 half units for the half infantry, and a smaller frigate ship can hold 1 or 2 of the half units. Between both ships, they can load all 3, and they will be transporting them over there. Now, your ships can move pretty far. They can do up to 6 sea zones, so they can move a pretty great distance, and they can stop along different ports along the way to pick up or drop off units. Now, for their purposes, they have decided to go to Amsterdam. They want to gain control of that port, which by just moving there in an unoccupied port, they will take control of it. And they were transporting all of these units, so they get loaded up in England and they get dropped off here. The one thing I didn't understand about the rules is I might have missed it on whether or not you can load and unload in the same turn. I'm just going to go with you can. I like playing it that way, but I might be getting that aspect wrong. So if I am, I apologize. And since we are going to be potentially annexing this territory, we will put an annexation marker there. And just to save myself time, I go ahead and get the fort and I lay it there with the flag face down to indicate they have not gained control of that land yet. So that's our move. We got these guys over to here. The ships are at the port. We do gain control of the port immediately, and the units have been offloaded inland, and the rest of these guys all move down to the coast so they can start being brought in later. And since this is one sea zone, we can get a lot done with those ships as far as their movement and getting those guys offloaded inland. All right, so that takes care of the UK. Where is Prussia going? Prussia is moving a lot of units in a lot of different directions. They're trying to annex a lot of territory. And especially in these early turns, this is why you really want to kind of go first so you can get into those territories first and kind of establish dominance before your opponents. But you don't know. Austria might be trying to come here. France might be trying to come here and try to gain some of these territories as well. So we know we are going 2 guys over here. And I'm trying to remember where I set all of them because I set a bunch of them, bunch of different directions. The trifecta went here. These 2 went to here. And these 3 went to here because Prussia already owns this territory. So this will give them a chance to gain control of all this annexed territory right here adjacent to them. But the Brits are trying to gain a foothold. Now, some of this territory, if you're playing without Spain and Russia, will be considered off limits. I'm not worrying too much about that for just my example game here, but do keep in mind things like Sawaski and Lithuania, and I think a couple of spots down south, and obviously Spain, are considered off limits if those factions aren't in the game. Like I said, I'm just doing an example game, so I'm not exactly worrying about all those places being off limits. All right, so we got them moved. We got the last guys, and they are moving over to here to try to gain control of it. So Prussia is doing a big push. They're trying to gain control of as much territory as they possibly can. And like I said, for ease of access, I always just throw down a fort and a flag laying face down to indicate that it has not been annexed yet. And there is technically no fort there yet. So it's not until that fort is established that it's been annexed that they will get the fort. But this just saves me time when I'm playing the game. This is just something I do. This is not what the game tells you to do, just to save myself time later on so I don't have to start fishing out pieces. You could just wait and do that later on, though, after all movement is complete. But I know these territories are likely to be annexed. So, like I said, it saves me a little time. And we'll go ahead and mark annexation for all of these areas. Try not to bump my camera here as I'm reaching across this massive, massive, beautiful map here. Because they are attempting to annex all of it later on this turn. All right, they're going after 5 territories. Now that brings us to France, the one that we started with. You remember, we played it pretty safe with France. We just went for some early territories, so we will move into these mountains. Stop our units there. We will move these 3 into these mountains right here on the border of Switzerland. And remember, you have to cross mountains. You cannot exit mountains from an end, right? So like there's this mountain piece here. You can't go from the mountains into Württemberg. You would have to come from a different territory. You can go from the mountains into Switzerland or the mountains back into France, but you can't end from an end cap of mountains. And they also went here to Württemberg with their trifecta. So they are only attempting to annex 1 spot now, but they're going after more later. And they kept their one piece back at home just in case the British decided to come south. And again, I'll do my little quirk of throwing a fort there with a flag down to indicate that they're attempting to take control. Lastly, let's take a look at Austria. Austria decided to go a little crazy. They're going everywhere. They're trying to get units into a bunch of different spots, but they did not realize they are going to be running headlong into the Prussians. So up here, they have 3 units here on the border. They had decided to send their cavalry up to the right. So let's go ahead and start moving some of their units. The cavalry went here while the 2 infantry went here. Now we're going to flip this over into a contested area. Now we're going to have a battle there. We'll resolve that here in a second. Let me go ahead and just do the rest of the movements for Austria real quick. We'll go ahead and get those done. Austria also went into Bavaria with their trifecta. They're ready to head against the French. We've got 2 other units that moved down here to the south, and then they use their shipping to come over here into the Papal States down in Italy so they could drop off a couple of infantry so they gain control of a port, and they're trying to annex down here. All right, now you notice that I've got some stuff up here. We've got a little combat going on here. For the most part, I don't worry too much about the little flags, the little arrows, unless it is pertinent. I think it gets a little unwieldy putting them all out. So I only really worry about putting them out if an order got canceled, or if in this case we had an aggressive move. So these white Austrian units did move against the Prussian units. So I'm going to go ahead and mark them with a red arrow because they have moved against the Prussians. And the Prussians I am marking with a blue arrow because the Prussians have already accomplished their movement completely, but they did not make a technically aggressive move. So they're not initiating a battle. The Austrians are initiating the battle by moving against them. So the Austrians can't participate in an offensive battle again after this round of attacks. They can be attacked. So you can participate as many times defensively, but only once offensively. You might be wondering to yourself, okay, well, why would they have red arrows or blue arrows or anything like that anyway? Because you're really only doing one movement. Well, we didn't have to worry about that in this first turn because everyone was starting in their home territories. But when it comes to battles, you can initiate a battle before you move or after you move, right? But you can only do one offensive battle. That's why you have to mark the red arrow. And that can happen if you start in an area with enemy units like they moved into your area. You can initiate a battle and then conduct the movement that you put down for. But we will use this as an example. We'll have our 2, this isn't a good battle to have, but this will work for our purposes. We will have our 2 Austrian infantry here attack the Prussian trifecta. We'll grab our little small map out. And just for example purposes, this isn't accurate to the game state. I am going to include the fort just so you guys can see how forts work as well. All right, so for our purposes, I went ahead and just grabbed the small little one. We didn't need the big battle board for this small of a battle, but this will be an example for our purposes. Remember, we got our trifecta here for the Prussians. They technically don't have a fort yet. I'm giving them the fort to show game purposes, right? Just to show how a fort works in battle. Now, there are 2 zones of combat. We've got the front zone and the rear zone. Infantry will always be in this front zone. Cannons will always be in the rear zone, and cavalry can be in either zone. Although if cavalry is in the front, they roll 2 dice. If they're in the rear, they roll 1 dice. So they're a little weaker in the rear, but they're less likely to take damage being in the rear than if they're in the front. Also, when it comes to forts, forts have to be hit first. There is a hierarchy for damage. It is listed down here in the rule book. The order in which enemy units will take hits always are going to be those forts first, then your half infantry, full infantry, cavalry, and cannons last. Your ships will depend on what order you line them up. They do an actual line of battle. The ship in the front takes the hits first, and then so on down the line. And you can't spread it out. The first ship will have to take enough hits to die before the second ship can start taking damage. Now, this battle is sadly very, very one-sided. You wouldn't really want to have this battle going on. Let's grab out some dice to get this figured out. Now, For our Prussians, to figure out what they have, they've got the trifecta, which is combined arms. Combined arms is 1 full infantry, a cannon, and cavalry. Has to be full infantry, can't be 2 halves. That alone, just that trifecta, adds 2 white dice and a black die. Now their actual dice is going to be 1 black die for the fort and 1 black die for the cannon. The cavalry, being in the front zone, will add 2 white die, and the full infantry themselves will add 3 white die. So their stack is a lot of white dice and 3 black dice. This is looking pretty bad for the Austrians. The Austrians have 1 white die for each of their half infantry. Like I said, it's not looking good. The Austrians should not have attacked. Now we get to use our aggression pieces. Remember, we got a little wooden block with stickers on it. You have to pick which side you want to be. Do you want to be aggressive or do you want to be defensive? Well, since our Prussians have an overwhelming advantage, they want to be aggressive. That means any bars that they roll as such will count as hits. If you choose defensive, then any bars you roll will count as blocks for incoming hits. So you can either have extra damage or extra defense. So this is the way we will go for our attack. Now, there's one last thing when it comes to combat. Our white dice have 2 colors. They have red and they have blue. Both of those count as a hit, but they count as a hit in different zones. Let me make sure I got this lined up properly here. A red hit is a hit in the rear zone, whereas a blue hit is a hit in the front zone. Black dice can hit in either zone. Since the Austrians don't have any units in the rear, our Prussians here want to roll as many blue dice as possible. Now, there's a lot more stuff going on with combat besides just this. You can have multiple factions involved. Either side will have to pick a single commander if there are multiple nations involved in a single combat. If you're the attacker, you are automatically the commander for your side. And then any allied nation with you, you'll get to basically control their units. The thing with that, though, is you get to also decide hits. So you might decide to put all those hits towards your allied nation rather than taking your own units. So you have to be careful with your allies. Combat can go for up to 3 rounds, either until one or both sides are completely wiped out. The active commander chooses to end the engagement after the first or second battle round, or 3 battle rounds have passed. All right, so for our first battle round here, it's called an opening salvo. An opening salvo only has black dice being rolled. You do not roll any white dice. After the first opening salvo round, that's when you start including the white dice into the combat. But that first one's only going to be these pretty little black dice that can do double hits. In this case, our Austrians do not have any dice to roll. So for our opening salvo, we blow them away. We can blow them away. This did not go well for the Austrians. They took 3 hits, so they are wiped out by cannon fire from the fort and the cannon before they were even able to approach. Sad, sad day for the Austrians. The 2 half Austrian infantry here would be placed into the Prussian treasure box as morale points for later on scoring purposes. Now, had they survived, then in the next salvo, that's when all of the dice would have come into play. The Austrians would have rolled their measly 2. The Prussians would have rolled all of theirs, including the black dice again. And again, like I said, just keep in mind that when it comes to white hits, the blue is front and the red is rear. Easy to remember, red rear, blue front. When it comes to applying those hits. In this case, we didn't have that happen, but it works out the same way. But that gives you a quick down and dirty example. Just remember your hit hierarchy and that opening salvo when it comes to combat. And if you have just a small amount of units, it's easier just to use this little board and only bring out that big one when you have a huge stack of units getting stuck in. But as you can see here, things like elite status, which gained us an extra die for the infantry here, which I don't even know, did I include that? The elite status for the full infantry here is very, very effective. and cavalry are more effective in the front than they are in the rear. And obviously cannon fire is really sweet. And like I said, the trifecta, adding in 1 black and 2 white die just for having 3 of those is excellent. And I do believe that does compound. So if you have 2 sets of combined arms, I believe you get the bonus twice. Now, a force can only be a part of a triad once, so you can't use the same full infantry for 2 triads. However, multiple nations can form a triad on their own with their individual units. So let's say, you know, this wasn't Prussian, this was UK, right? This was British. It would still count. If they were fighting on the same side, it would still count as a triad, gaining them that bonus. So in this case, we just move our victorious units back to the board. They're good to go. We flip this back over to its annex side because the combat has been completed. And then that's what would happen for any combat. Now, generally, you're going to resolve your combat as you're doing your movement. You're not going to wait and do it all at the end. It just worked out for me doing it this way, easier for filming purposes. But make sure you understand that combat's going to be resolved during a player's on the march phase of the game. Now, after you have completed all of your movement, that's when you're going to attempt your annexations. And when it comes to annexations, it's pretty easy to understand. You will roll 1 white die per unit in the territory, +1 for things like having the Dominus medal, or +1 for having elite units in the area. So for example, we'll use this French area right here for Württemberg. They have 3 units and 1 of them is elite. That means they get to roll 4 white dice in their attempt to annex that territory. All you have to do is roll it. And if you get any hit, which we only got 1 hit here, that will count and they will be able to annex the territory. And starting on the next game turn, they will be able to gather tax resources, which is only 1 for these neutral green territories here, but it will gain them extra taxable income. Every player will do that for any area that has one of those little annexation symbols on it that you have moved units to. After that, you get into the on parade section of the game, and that's where you start getting into the voting on turn 5. Remember, our little blocks here will be used for that as well. This is yes, this is no, and that is players voting to end it, to have the Congress of Vienna, which will end the game. That is going to come down to a vote. It carries on with ties into another game round. So obviously, if one player is winning really well, the other 3 are probably going, no, we're going to keep going and smash your butt on turn 6. Lastly, you will do a round of purchasing units. This is where all that gold that you're collecting is going to be tallied up and spent. So 4 for a half infantry, 6 for cavalry, 8 for full infantry, and so on, up to 15 for a full ship of the line. You can see it's going to take pretty much almost an entire year's worth, entire treasury's worth, just 1 turn's worth of income just to produce 1 ship of the line. Do keep in mind, any forces you purchase do have to go to your home territory. You're not going to be able to put them out there on the front. You're going to have to purchase them, put them out here, and then they'll have to move in and get stuck in later on. Just don't forget on the parade turn and throughout the game, you're going to be filling these 2 out for things like medals for gaining control of territories, taking out enemy units, and your prestige chart for gaining points throughout the game. You'll tick this up on that on the parade turn as well. Now, this was a high level overview of the game. I didn't even get into all the little nitty-gritty, showing all that stuff off. Just one quick battle showing you how the basics of combat works in this game. But as you can see, it can start to get really deep, especially if you get a stack of units and you start rampaging through. Other nations start allying together for certain battles. Remember, you can play it freehand. Everyone's just free to do whatever they want, but you can make allies. You can do that soft democracy during the game and say, hey, let's work together. Let's attack Prussia together. And you can decide to do that. But there's nothing saying you can't then turn on your ally later in the game and, stab them in the back. And that's just the wheeling and dealing, I think, is something you'd really lose playing this game solitaire. Because I think that's one of the things that will really just bump this game up, just that extra little bit to take it into so much fun when you're kind of backstabbing each other, trying to work out deals, taking out the player that's in the lead. Like, no, we got to work together. He's got too big of a score. He's taking out too much territory. You know, we can't let him snowball, all that good stuff. But for a game of this size, it is streamlined enough that the rulebook is actually relatively small and the rules aren't overly complex. It gets a little fiddly when you start figuring out how many dice you're going to have, but it's in no way overly complex. You're looking for things like triads for extra dice, elite units provide extra dice, certain things like that, and then just making sure you follow that hit hierarchy of hitting things like the forts first and then whatever unit on down the line. Same when you're doing ships battling each other, you simply line them up. Hey, I want this unit in the front, this unit behind it, so this unit is going to take the damage first and then that unit. I did read something in the rulebook that says you can't start units as cargo, so that first move there for the UK would have technically been illegal. I'm not going to worry about it too much, but just as an FYI, I did goof that little part right there. Anyway, I hope this helps you guys out, give you an example, let you see the game in action. There's so many moving parts, so much cool stuff, excellent components, excellent gameplay, and just fun game, just massive, it's beautiful, just beautiful looking game. A huge damn box, a lot of gameplay. I could see a gaming group having a lot of fun with this one. This one isn't one I would recommend firstly to a solitaire player. Like I said, I think that sweetness comes from that wheeling and dealing between all the different nations. So this is something I would really recommend to a good, strong core gaming group to have fun with. But all right, that's going to be it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Y'all take care, and I will catch you in the next one.